When I asked the organizers a few days ago whether, as all the other talks over here, were some sort of a reflection or narration of people's own experiences, people's own life stories, I was told that this, in my case, would not be, the topic would not be expressed or discussed in the context of my own life story, but that of the philosophy and the teachings of Allama Muhammad Iqbal. So I am going to stick to the script that has been given to me. And I am going to present to you, in the context of the topic of discussion of today, the common or overlapping themes that are found in the writings and the teachings of Allama Iqbal. And I will start with, if you could please, first taking up the principle of movement. The principle of movement as set out in the poetry and philosophy of Allama Iqbal has to do with the fact that, or I would say the belief expressed by Iqbal, that existence is marked by perpetual change and movement. The cosmos, the sun, the moon, the stars are all these heavenly bodies are in a perpetual state of motion. And not only does he notice that motion, that movement, he feels that there is a purpose or meaning behind that movement. That there is a quest or there is a search for some sort of a purpose or a destination behind that movement. And that principle of movement is something that he corresponds between the heavenly bodies and the human existence. He relates that principle of movement to movement and change in human history, to movement and change in human society, and to movement and change in the individual human being. There are plenty of examples of how this concept of movement and change has been encapsulated in his poetry. But I'll give you just one such example, which comes from his epic poem, Sakinama, or the Ode to the Cupbearer. Sakinama, or Ode to the Cupbearer, is a poem that celebrates movement. It celebrates change. It celebrates creativity. And at one point in that poem, Allama Iqbal talks about the joyous movement of the mountain stream. Please keep going. Mountain stream over there, it bounds, it halts, it curves, it glides, it leaps, it slides, it gathers itself, and after much winding and turning, it sallies forth. Please keep going. Should it be stemmed, it would burst the rocks and cut open the hearts of the hills. Please go on. It has a message. It says, the mountain stream, my fair cupbearer, has a message to give us of life. I asked you to bear with it because this was a translation. Now I will present to you the Urdu verses in which the principle of movement is described in the motion of that joyous mountain stream. वो जुए कोहिस्तां उचकती हुई, अटकती, लचकती, सरकती हुई, उछलती, फिसलती, संभलती हुई, बड़े पेच खाकर निकलती हुई, रुके जब तो सिर चीर देती है ये, पहाड़ों के दिल चीर देती है ये। जरा देख ऐ साकिए लाला फाम, सुनाती है ये जिंदगी का बयान. So this principle of movement and this perpetual movement and change is actually what existence is all about. insofar as Allama Iqbal believes. For him, being static in one place is being dead. Please, the next slides. And this will interconnect with his concept of passion. In Urdu, it would be called tasawwur-e-ishq, the concept of passion or ishq. And will you have the next bullet point, please? Now, there are two types of ishq, or two types of passion. And before him, all Urdu poets related to just one form of ishq, which was that of union. In Urdu, it's called the ishq of wisal, that here is the lover and the beloved, and the lover finds the beloved and attains some sort of union, and there is peace found in that union, and that is the end of the story, and that's called the passion or ishq of wisal. Allama Iqbal shunned that concept of the ishq of wisal, the passion or love for uniting, or the love of union. His view of ishq is that, excuse me, his view of ishq is that of the ishq of firaq. Firaq meaning separation, and constant separation, because in the ishq of wisal, or in the ishq of union, or in the passion of union, you become static, and that means death. The perpetual motion and change must go on. And that is why the ishq of firaq is the ishq that he adopts, and he expounds on that as a principle of existence and life, that live your life with that passion which has to do with separation. The ishq of firaq, because that passion has in Urdu bechani and bekarari constantly attached to it. That passion constantly has this restlessness, this yearning for the quest, and the quest for higher and loftier goals. And he believes that human potential is limitless, and the task of conquering nature is never ending. And for that reason, life becomes a series of quests. And according to him, we must progress from one stage to another, never resting on our laurels, always regarding one destination as another milestone along the way. Let me give you a living example of what the passion of separation means. That is from my personal history and the part of the caravan that I am. Here is a destination called winning the World Cup for your country, but you don't rest your laurels on that. You go on and set up a philanthropic organization which experts from all over the world say would be an impossible achievement, that such expensive treatment for free and such a large scale, but that milestone is also achieved, and that there is no rest there. There is another milestone achieved. A political party is formed. There is another milestone achieved. A university is formed. There is another milestone achieved. A relief and rehabilitation organization is formed, and then so on and so forth. So that is the kind of quest, and that is the kind of product of the ishq of firaq, or the passion of separation, which constantly has restlessness and yearning and the quest for higher and loftier goals. If you like something, you can give a round of applause for anything you like, by the way. There's no obstruction from my side on this. And in that very context, one theme that is constantly, repetitively being found in the poetry of Allama Iqbal is the relationship between man and nature, or I would be gender neutral, about the relationship between human being and nature. And according to Iqbal and his teachings, nature actually serves as a foil for drawing out man's potential. Nature is described as God's unfinished business. Nature is like a rough-hewn rock awaiting a sculptor's hand to chisel a masterpiece from it. Please can I have the next bullet point? And creativity is the most critical action for enabling progress and advancement. These are the common themes in Iqbal's poetry. And I will now read to you a few things in translation. There is a dialogue between man and God that is described in a Persian verse of Allama Iqbal in Payam-e-Mashriq, his work, which literally means the message of the East. God says to man, from earth, I produced pure iron, but you made from that iron sword, arrow, and gun. But in his response, man alludes to the enhancement of an otherwise crude and undeveloped nature. Man says to God, you made deserts, mountains, and valleys. I made gardens, meadows, and parks. I am one who makes a mirror out of stone and turns poison into sweet, delicious drink. So what you come across, actually the apogee, the climax of this all, is that Iqbal does not find or does not incorporate or include man in the universe. He in fact incorporates the universe into the man. That it is the man has been, or human being has been entrusted with the job of conquering the universe. With what? Now we come to the next slide, which is about, they are all interconnected and overlapping principles, secrets of the self. In fact, it is the first poetical work of Allama Iqbal that was published in 1915, was called, 102 years ago, first one was called Khudi, which means secrets of the self, and it has to do with his concept of Khudi, or selfhood, is described as a primordial force, as the ultimate reality, the absolute ego, which through self-assertion or self-manifestation gives rise to a phenomenal world. And the next one. Khudi is described as a point of light. It is life itself. It is the spark of life in our dusty being. And because the human being possesses it in a relatively complete form, it thus tops the chain of all created things. He always, Allama Iqbal is always highlighting and exalting the factors that strengthen a person's selfhood or khudi, selfhood, self-reliance, self-esteem, self-confidence, self-assertion. What strengthens it? Challenge, devotion to a noble cause, self-discipline, and struggle against all odds. What weakens it? Fear, dependence on others, and life-negating philosophy and literature. The next one, please. And the concept of Khudi is also closely linked to life as a quest and discovery. In his work, Khudi, Secrets of the Self, he relies on several stories and several tales of how the concept of Khudi, the enhancement of the quality of Khudi, actually brings about glorious results. Here in this case, where I have referred to as no shortcuts, what Allama Iqbal talks about, and he gives this as an example. He says that if you live a life of passive conformity, you end up nowhere. But if you live a life, if you assert yourself against a resisting environment, a resistant environment, and you assert yourself, that is what strengthens your Khudi. And the example he gives is that of the same substance. This is from Khudi. It's not from a book of chemistry or physics. From Khudi, that it is the same substance which is called carbon. When it undergoes passive conformity with its environment, when it takes shortcuts, when it compromises, that carbon becomes coal. But the same substance, carbon, when it asserts itself against a resistant environment, it resists, it fights, it struggles, it eventually turns out to be a shining diamond. That is the concept. Challenge enhances Khudi. Allama Iqbal in Payam-e-Mashriq relates the story of a young man who goes to the saint of Lahore, Ali Hajweri Rahmatullah. Also, we know him as Data Ganj Bakhsh. And he says to Hazrat Data Ganj Bakhsh or Ali Ajmeri that I am surrounded by enemies. I am not able to fend off my enemies. Please bless me. Please offer a prayer from me so I can rid myself of the plethora of enemies that I am surrounded with. And the saint, instead of commiserating with the young man, he remarks that a powerful enemy is a blessing from God, because such an enemy presents a man with challenges that push him to the limit and thereby bringing out the best in him. So, obviously, the reliance is on strength, and because strength enhances character. Yet, Iqbal does not just confine himself to strength or power. He also leaves plenty of room for finer human feelings. His ideal is a man who has a body of steel that houses a tender and compassionate heart. He says in Payam Mashriq, and I'll tell you the translation, he says, build with your handful of dust a body stronger than a rock fortress. And inside this body, let there be a heart that feels sorrow like a stream flowing by a mountain. I have the last bullet here. Life is a struggle, says Allama Iqbal, and not a set of rights to be claimed unconditionally. And he narrates the story of the self-respecting Turkish sailor who sings as he rows his boat, saying that if he ran into trouble on the high seas, he would call upon none other than the storm itself for help. May I have the next slide, please? Here, I think I could not have completed a conversation over here, and a conversation that has to do with shooting for the stars, without alluding to the symbolism of the Shaheen as portrayed by Allama Iqbal. The Shaheen which he delivers unto his readers as a symbol for the young generation is actually, why is that Shaheen, or I guess the closest that a bird comes to in the Western terminology would be an eagle. And not the bald eagle, which is a symbol of the United States, but the golden eagle, which is of the same color. And you can get videos of that on various places, from various places in cyberspace. The reason why the Shaheen is used as a symbol is because, and that is also found in various parts of Allama Iqbal's poetry, because of its 5 attributes. It possesses vision and foresight. It is tez nigah, so it possesses vision and foresight. Buland parwaz, it is capable of high soaring flights. If there is a storm, he will go above the clouds and soar higher than the clouds, above the storm. It craves solitude. Khilwat pasand, because in solitude, it is in solitude that you can be creative. And creativity is such an important element of human existence that in one place in his poetry, Allama Iqbal says, and he makes God say, now it's God saying in Allama Iqbal's verses, that whosoever in this world has not indulged in creativity, has not taken his share from my beauty, he has not taken his destiny from my existence, and he is the real infidel, he is the real hypocrite. He has deprived himself from the real fruit of life and existence. So tez nigah, buland parwaz, khilwat pasand, दरवेश कभी आशियाना नहीं बनाता, परिंदों की दुनिया का दरवेश हूं मैं कि शाही बनाता नहीं आशियाना. It doesn't mean literally that the Shaheen does not want a roof over its head. It's that it signifies that the Shaheen is disinterested in material things. Darwish, the concept of being a darwish or fakiri, as Allama Iqbal says, is also expressed in a Persian poem of his in Payam Mashriq, which in translation, actually I'll narrate what it says, is a story of a Persian poet called Ghani Kashmiri. And just to show fakiri or fakro istaghna or darweshi, shunning of materialism, he tells the story of Ghani Kashmiri. About Ghani Kashmiri, it was famous that when he would be inside his home, he would lock his home from the inside. But when he would leave his home, he would leave everything open, unlocked and open. And somebody asked him, Ghani Kashmiri, what is this all about? When you're inside, you lock yourself in. But you go outside, you leave everything open. His answer was that the most precious thing inside my home is me. And when I'm not there, I don't care. And the fifth and final quality is कभी किसी दूसरे के हाथ का मारा हुआ शिकार नहीं खाना, जो शाहीन जो होता है. It relies on no one else. It eats only what it kills itself. So these are the 5 attributes of the Shaheen. So I jump to the last slide here of this discussion to try and figure out what conclusions we have reached about how, in Allama Iqbal's view, in his teachings, his writings, his philosophy, we can shoot for the stars. Please. Shoot for the stars. Number 1, believe in and live an existence marked by perpetual change and movement, earnestly pursuing a goal and a destination. Progress from one stage to another, never resting on your laurels, always regarding your destination as another milestone along the way. Number 3, be creative, not a copycat, and fulfill your proper role in the world by perfecting what is imperfect in nature, thereby also discharging your role as God's colleagues. Take challenges head on. They build strength and determination. Just like that man who went to Ali Hajberi and said, rid me of my enemies. Take challenges head on. Put a stamp of your own personality on the resistant environment, just like being the carbon that turns into a shining diamond rather than the carbon that turns into gold. And treat life as a struggle, not as a set of rights to be claimed unconditionally. Just like the self-respecting Turkish sailor who is rowing his boat and singing that if I find trouble in the high seas, I will ask no one else but the storm to come to my help. And the last bullet point, please. Be a Shaheen. Become a visionary, fly high, crave solitude, shun materialism, and rely on no one but yourself. Don't put just your lasso onto the stars. That's like shooting for stars. Allama Iqbal doesn't talk, well, he didn't only say, for him it was just a starting point that you put your lasso or kamand jo hai, wo sitaron pe daliye. Actually, what he said was to find a destination beyond that. He said it about his own self. अपनी जौलागाह ज़ेरे आसमां समझा था मैं, आबो गिल के खेल को अपना जहां समझा था मैं. बेहिजाबी से तेरी टूटा निगाहों का तिलिस्म. He says to God that you broke the spell. एक हृदय नील को आसमां समझा था मैं. What I thought was the sky was actually just a blue sheet. There is way beyond that, thankfully. And his caravan of stars and the moons and the planets got lost and got tired. But he thought they were with him. He said, I even went beyond that. The next verse is, कारवां थक कर फजा के पीछे खत में रह गया, मेहरो माहो मुश्तरी को हम फना समझा था मैं. And last but not least, and I hope for this conversation, I can believe in these 2 verses with which I will take your leave. Again, verses from Allama Iqbal, because they also express the same vision, that not to shoot just for the stars, but to go way beyond them. सितारों से आगे जहां और भी हैं, अभी इश्क के इम्तिहां और भी हैं. And after this conversation, I hope this last verse from the same poem will also be true. That गए दिन के तन्हा था मैं अंजुमन में, यहाँ मेरे रास्ता और भी.